Good day, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm Zach Lim from Malaysia. All right, I'm specialized in building super flat concrete floors. I'm the past president of American Concrete Institute Malaysian chapter. All right, it's an honor for me to be invited by CIDC and Dr. Surendra, right, to have a small talk on this online international conference on reviving construction industry for post-COVID world. So I'm going to present to you the roles of high-performance concrete for concrete floors. Right. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic, right, has caused serious problems throughout the world, and these are some of the shortcomings. Right. The first is, projects are delayed, all right, because or postponed or cancelled, all right, and as a result, people have to incur a lot of extra expenses, to finish off the project. But some companies suffered tremendously, and they don't even have the money to complete the jobs, or as a result, they fail to fulfill their contract. Subsequently, because of the financial constraint, some of them, were even have to face all the legal suits and implications. So, shouldn't the construction industry find solutions to solve their problems, like what CIDC is organizing? But how? All right. I have only a small solution. That is, every one of us, or builders, must think beyond the standard construction operation and practices. Right. I'm going to list some of it. So, the first thing is we have to use special concrete. All right. The first one is ultra high performance concrete. The second one is self-compacting concrete. The third is high early strength concrete, and the fourth is fiber reinforced concrete. And finally is, if you're using the best concrete, you need best construction practices. If not, you end up back to square one. So with ultra high performance concrete, it would definitely help you to increase the productivity. All right, I'll explain all this as we go along. The second thing is using self-compacting concrete. It will certainly help to reduce the cost reduction in operation, right? And of course followed by labor force. And thirdly, using high early strength concrete, all right, it will help you to speed up and have a lot of cost saving in your construction. And the fiber reinforced concrete would actually is a kind of a new innovation to this part of the world, but fibers has been in use for the past, I don't know, probably 30 years or more, right? And lastly, as I mentioned, best construction practices is very, very important, right? So to shorten the construction period by doing it right the first time is very important. As you know that when you deal with concrete, you don't want to come back and do any repairs or rework, all right? And it's very, very costly and it's time consuming, all right? And you can never get it right like the original. Okay, so I propose the above type of high performance concrete to replace the standard concrete, and I'll start to explain one by one. As you know that high performance concrete, all right, first you have very high compressive strength, all right, easily 100 to 150 or more, all right, and the latest I heard they can even have up to 800 MPa using ultra high performance concrete. Right. Of course, the second thing is it comes with very high fractural strength, all right? And with high fractural strength, normally you can even help you to reduce thickness of concrete and all that. All right. So this is a video to show that this is a very high flow concrete. As you can see, this mortar is not a self-compacting, but it's just a high flow. All right. So with this, you can actually reduce the cost compared to self-compacting concrete. All right. So how can we increase productivity? All right. As I mentioned earlier, either you use high-performance concrete or ultra-high-performance concrete. So with high-performance concrete, all right. Okay. So let's go back to the conventional concrete topping. As you know, in the market, normally you have to top up like 50 to 75 mm thick onto your existing substructures. All right. So if you use high performance concrete, probably you can bring it down to as thin as 20 mm. All right. And if you use ultra high performance concrete, you can bring it down to as thin as 8 mm. All right. And of course, you need some fibers to be added. Okay. Then the second thing, of course, it will help you to increase your production rate. All right. For example, you can see that 3 to 5 times easily. That means if normally you can do a 200 meter square, with this special concrete, you can even do up to 1,000 meter square per day. Why? Because the mixing is the thinner, the coverage is a bigger area and all that. So it will certainly help you to speed up the work. Right. The second thing is cost reduction in operation and to reduce labor. So the best is to use self-compacting concrete. As you know very well, these are the following advantages. The first thing is consistency. You know very well that you don't have to worry once the design make is done. You just place your concrete, just pump it in, and that's it. All right, and just tamp the surface, and it's so easy and no hassle. Of course, the second thing is you get very high durability, because for self-compacting concrete, you always use a very low water-cement ratio. As you know that the plasticizers that you use are all the polycarbonate ethers. All right. And the third thing is you reduce your labor force as much as 2/3. All right. So generally, let's say if you need about 10 workers to place and vibrate your concrete, with SCC you can reduce them to probably 3 or 4 laborers. Right. And last thing is shorten your construction time, isn't it? Imagine you're doing a basement slab, all right, 1 meter thick, all right. What you're going to do is just continue pumping the concrete and fill up, and nothing is done. You don't have to vibrate it, you don't have to do anything. So that's why it helps to speed up the construction time. And finally, you don't need any form of vibration, so you don't have to worry about machines breakdown, all right. And most important, it eliminates noise pollution, isn't it? So no noise and all that. Oh, and you don't have to worry about under vibration or over vibration. As you know, if you under vibrate, the concrete is not dense enough, it's not then becomes not permeable, it becomes permeable to water. And if you over vibrate, you might have segregation, which causes all the honeycombs and all that. So these are the advantages using self-compacting concrete, even though it might cost like another 20% or so more expensive, but the net you get a lot of savings. All right, then let's look at the speedy construction method. If you are doing multi-story buildings, first, do you know that you can actually eliminate the cement and sandcrete for every floor? Because olden days, we always, after we finish the multi-story, all the floors, we have to come back and do cement sand rendering, right? The reason is because if you don't do the cement sandcrete, the floor or the concrete that's been placed is undulating. So you need to come back and do generally a 50 mm cement sandcrete, all right, to build the flatness and all that. So if during construction, right, while placing a structural concrete slab, if you can control the flatness and level of the floor, all right, you can eliminate the cement, sand, scrape, right? And if you do it so well, you can it's ready for you to receive your tiles or even vinyl tiles by just putting a thin layer of underlayment, right? So with that, you save the hassles of bringing up the sand, the cement, the water, and the craning costs and all that. So end of the day, it can save you a lot of money. Where we have done a few projects lately in Kuala Lumpur, all right? And of course, the other thing is, if you use high early strength, is that you can actually save on your formwork, isn't it? As you know that if you do a multi-story building, you might probably need like 3 sets of formwork or even 4, right, to speed up the work. So with high early strength, you can remove your formwork after 24 hours and reuse it compared to your standard concrete where you need like about a week. So these are the reason, right, why the high early strength helps. So similarly for precast structures, right, those days you have to wait for 3 days at least or so before you demolish, all right? But today, right, even as early as 16 hours, you can demolish and then you can cast another set of structures again. So with the speedy construction method, it's very, very helpful, all right, to speed up and hand over your job early, right? And the fourth thing is introduce innovative building materials, right? So as you can see here, the fibers, right? You can have it in steel fibers or in synthetic fibers, right? And advantages are, as you can see, that first thing is a better crack control. It's 3-dimensional because when you add in these fibers into the concrete, right, and when you place it, it's all over the concrete, all right? Unlike the conventional reinforcement, where you must place the position right in order to meet the specification, especially on the concrete cover, all right? So because it's 3-dimensional, so it's definitely a better crack control compared to reinforcement. As you know that reinforcement is basically there to minimize the crack, right, or controls the cracks there. And the other thing is they are much cheaper if you are doing a 2-layer reinforcement, right? If it's a single layer, probably using fibers a little bit more expensive, but if it's for sure for 2-layer, it's much economical, right? And for big projects, it can have very substantial savings. Then the third thing is you save labor. You don't need people to cut the bars, to tie them, and to place them using bar chairs or spacer blocks and all that. And even bar chairs, spacer block, all this cost money. So as a result, there's a lot of saving. And when it comes to the concrete, all right, you just use a standard normal concrete mix. You don't have to buy a pump mix, all right, because pump mix would cost an additional like 2-3 USD, okay? And finally, you save rental of concrete pumps or cranes, right, to haul in your concrete and all that. So as a result, these are the major savings, all right, if you use fibers, okay? And especially crack control compared to a mesh, right? Because to place the mesh to to minimize crack is very, very difficult. So with this, you don't have a problem, all right? And the last thing why I say best practices is very, very important is because all these are proven past experience where you know that if you follow all these, the right standard operating procedures, right, you would never go wrong, isn't it? So let me explain some of the examples as follows, right? To follow SOP, for example, right, this number 1, right? Workers always love to add water into the ready-mix truck when you arrive. so that it's easy for them to place the concrete, they just don't have to pull the concrete as hard when they are dry, compared to a harsh concrete. So adding water, is the biggest culprit, and the result is you get a very weak concrete, and then the concrete surface will have a lot of concrete bleeding, and that would result in efflorescence, and the worst is shrinkage crack. For sure, after a few months, you will see that a lot of crack starts to appear on the surface, right? And this shrinkage crack, as you know, if it's caused by excessive water, it will happen many months down the road. So, and with this crack, right, starts to appear just before you hand over, and then you will enter repair. And if you're not careful, or if you don't know how to repair, the repair will always be worse than the original, right? So repairing concrete crack is an art. It's not easy, right? And the second example is, you see, to avoid costly repair. What I mean is, if during construction, all right, you do not do your surface preparation well, right? I mean, if let's say your surface is not well roughened, not well cleaned up, all right, even probably there are oil and grease there, and okay. And the second thing is your bonding agent, all right. If you don't use a proper bonding agent, or you don't understand to use a bonding agent right, that bonding agent will become a debonding agent. As you know very well, when it dries up, you have to put another coat of bonding agent, unless there are some specific bonding agent where you must let it dry, right, before you put your concrete on top of it. So imagine if this failed, all right, and you can see you have to hack everything out, and you got to redo it, and it costs you a lot of money. And especially doing thin concrete topping is very, very difficult if you don't understand it. Most of the time, it will end up with a lot of delaminations. So this is the reason why you make sure that you follow all the good construction practices. And another example is to avoid unnecessary repair, right? This is again due to understanding of vibration, all right? You see, a lot of flaws that we come across, especially when the workers need to vibrate the concrete, right? They would tend to vibrate away from the edge of the formwork. The reason is because if you look at this vibrator, if they place it so close to the edge of the formwork, right, and they are worried that this formwork might give way, or it might buckle. So as a result, they will vibrate far away from the edge, like probably 300 to 600 mm away, all right. But you know what's the consequences? All right, you see that after months, when you open up the traffic, you see that the edge will start to spoil and start to crack, right? The reason is because these areas are not well vibrated. These are small little things, but if you don't follow your best practices, and you know very well that it's not easy to repair this, all right? If this is a road, it's a busy road, a concrete road, all right, you have to close it, a lot of interruption to traffic and all that. And not only that, you have to use some again, fast setting concrete for repair. And fast setting concrete are always very, very expensive. It can be as much as 10 times and all that. Okay. And another thing is placing the position of the reinforcement. As you can see that this reinforcement is actually just sitting on top of the soil or the earth, all right? And to me, this is of no use. You might as well save the reinforcement, all right? As you know very well, reinforcement is basically there to minimize crack, all right? So if there's any crack, it's basically there to hold the crack tight. So this is a sketch to show, all right, if this is your concrete, right, if the reinforcement is right at the bottom, as you can see in this picture on the left, okay, so crack would always start to propagate and stops where the reinforcement is. As we have done a lot of core on the crack floors, we always see that the crack stops at where the reinforcement is. All right, so as you can see, similarly in this case, right, so that's why I say you can actually save this reinforcement. So by right, the reinforcement should be positioned like 25 mm to maybe max 50 mm down, right, depending on the slab thickness and the type of structures that you are using and all that. So these are small little things, but very, very important, right? Okay, another one is on contraction joints, all right? So as you know very well, contractors, if don't understand on contraction joints, when they finish up a big floor slab, they would, when do they cut the floor? For me, even before I was a floor specialist, I would do it as and when I'm free. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks down the road, all right? And we always say, hey, there's nothing wrong with the floor. I don't see any cracks. But like I said, shrinkage crack will always happen few months down the road, all right? Unless it's thermal crack, it will crack within the next 3 days or so, all right? And so you must understand, first thing, when to cut. Right? For me, I always say you must cut the floor slab like 8 to 12 hours after you place or you finish them, all right? And the reason is because if you cut too late, all right, especially on the external, all right, due to the sun and you will see that a lot of micro cracks would actually develop, which you can't see with your naked eye. So when you cut too late, sometimes you do see actually after you have the saw cut done, you will see another crack by the side of it, all right? And this crack is caused by either you cut too late or your saw cut depth is insufficient. These are the two main reasons. So like I say, when to cut, you can cut it, the earlier the possible, as long when your saw blade goes down, it doesn't rip off the edges, you can proceed, right? So the timing is as soon as possible, right? Definitely within 24 hours if you can. Then the second thing is how deep to cut, right? The rule of thumb is that you cut 25% of the slab thickness for normal concrete. If it's a fiber reinforced, you probably cut like 1/3 of the slab thickness, okay? So in other words, let's say you have a slab of 200 mm thick, you have to cut 25%, which is 50 mm deep, right? And this is very important. And people do say that, why not we cut all the way down, all right, all the way through? You can't do it for two reasons. One is you might have actually a double bars, all right, where you want to do saw cut for especially heavy traffics and all that, and you don't want to cut your double bar. And the other thing is that it's also very costly, all right, to cut all the way down. And third thing, if it's very thick slabs like 400 thick, you might not have the plate to cut and all that. So enough is just 25% of the slab thickness, all right? And the final thing is the saw cut interval. What is the spacing, all right? So let's say if you've done the first cut here, where should be the second cut? All right, based on our experience, for external, you shouldn't do anything more than 5 meters. All right, if you cut up to, let's say, 10 meters, you might have a crack, all right, a natural crack in between your two saw cut. For internal, I would say maybe 6 meters, max up to 8 meters. All right, and I say all these interval or the spacing between saw cut will have to be subjected to your grade of concrete, your reinforcement, all right, and even the weather, all right, whether it's internal or it's external. Okay, and that's all I got to say. So to conclude, all right, as I say, as a result of the pandemic, it has imposed great challenges to each and every one of us but been able to gather all the concrete experts from all over the world. Together, we shall revive the construction industry. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there's any questions and answer, please do write to me. Thank you. All right. And have a good day, everybody.
Good day to all. Thank you for having me here. I am very honored to be here with you today. My name is Wilfredo Guerrero. I am a technical advisor for the Instituto Salvadoreño del Cemento y del Concreto, or the Salvadoran Cement and Concrete Institute. Um, Today, we're going to talk about measures adopted by the construction industry of El Salvador in regards to the pandemic of COVID-19. El Salvador is the smallest country in Central America with an area of 21,000 square kilometers and a population of 6.5 million people that live in El Salvador. There are about 2 to 3 million people living outside of the country. El Salvador has borders with Guatemala and Honduras, and to the south, we have the Pacific Ocean as our border. The GDP in 2018 was 26.1 billion US dollars, and it is estimated that during the first 6 months of 2020, the GDP has contracted 9.3%. When the pandemic started, our borders were immediately closed, both land and airport, and well, and sea as well. Um, and on March 21st, a mandatory quarantine was implemented by the government of El Salvador. Most of the industrial sector, including the construction industry, was shut down. Only the pharmaceutical and food industry kept work functioning as they provided essential products and services during the pandemic. Service providers for maintenance and construction of essential infrastructure could operate with special permits. In our case, we were asked by a company that is developing a wind power project here in El Salvador. We were asked to conduct some tests on their landfills. So through them, we were able to get permits from the government to be able to transport our equipment to the site of the project. On June 18th, the construction industry was reactivated. Although only 30% of the workforce was able to get back to work, of the construction workforce, because of the restrictions, only 30%. Since the start of the quarantine, the Salvadoran Chamber of Construction, CASALCO, started working on health and safety protocols for the industry's construction workers. through the Inter-American Federation of the Construction Industry, they researched what member countries were doing to adapt to the new reality of COVID-19. Based on their research, a protocol of preventive measures for the mitigation of COVID-19 for the construction industry was drafted and presented to the government in April. This protocol served as the template for other sectors. And this is the protocol that was first implemented. This is the Ministry of Labor and Social Security of El Salvador, and this is the protocol of preventive actions to combat the disease of COVID-19 in construction sites. And this is the Chamber of Construction. They have a magazine, and they were the ones that started to work on this protocol so that the construction industry could get back to operating as soon as possible. For construction companies, the government required the implementation of health and safety protocols in offices and at construction sites. Some of the prevention measures adopted are social distancing, at least 2 meters distance between workers, mandatory wearing of respiratory masks, face shields, goggles, home office, reducing face-to-face activities. So instead of having a meeting with other staff physically at your workplace or at the project site, you would try to do it via phone calls, emails, or virtual meetings like Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams, etc. Splitting the workforce into shifts, reducing concentration of workers at the office and job site. At our organization, our team is of 13 people. So we were able to easily divide it into 2 groups. And while one group is at the office during the week, the other group is doing home office, and we are alternating every other week. We are still doing this, and we have been successful in that we have prevented our workers from getting sick. Important also is the access to hygiene products. You need to have hand sanitizer, soap, and water readily available for workers at the office and also at the construction site. Cleaning surfaces such as desks, door handles, phones, keyboards, and office tools at least twice a day. Training of management staff and workers about adopted measures to prevent exposure to virus. This is important because they need to know what are the measures that the company has adopted at the construction site or the office so that they can keep safe. And constant communication with workers is a must. Workers classified as vulnerable to COVID-19 needed to stay at home. This includes persons 60 years or older, pregnant women, and anyone with a chronic disease, which can be diabetes, heart conditions, and any other disease which we know that make them vulnerable to COVID-19. Temperature is taken with infrared thermometers on the forehead when entering the office or construction site, and a record is kept. Lately, since technology has been, technology has been advancing here, I have also seen that they are using infrared cameras to instantly see if what is your temperature range. Meetings of more than 10 people are not allowed, and we are required to follow the government's indications for public spaces. How has COVID-19 affected the construction industry in El Salvador? Well, this is a graph showing the apparent consumption of cement in thousands of 42.5 kilogram bags. And this is the start of 2016. We can see the trend here. It's growing year by year. But then because of the pandemic, this is in March, February, it starts to go down to just 1,036.7 bags of 42.5 kilogram bags of cement, which is a record low. This data goes all the way back to 2005, and this is the lowest point. So it really impacted this indicator of the construction industry, it was really impacted by COVID. The government's investment in infrastructure was reduced. These are the expenditures for infrastructure for the Ministry of Works of El Salvador. We can see this is the total for this item, which is infrastructure. In 2019, 17 million, almost $18 million US dollars were spent in invested in infrastructure. In 2020, we only have 6 million US dollars invested, which is a difference of 11, almost 12 million US dollars. We see here that in roads, this is the same trend. In the case of health and environmental sanitation, which is infrastructure related to fixing hospitals, clinics, and also equipment for sanitation of people and utensils, tools, whatever. We see that actually it changed positively in 2020, where this was not an expenditure at all in 2019. Supervision of infrastructure remained, was a little bit more in 2020, and other infrastructure works, which was none at all. So in total, the difference between 2020 and 2019 is less investment in 2020. There was a loss of jobs in the construction industry. 26% of the workers lost their jobs. And when the construction industry was reactivated on July 18th, only 30% of workers were able to get to the job site because of the restrictions in transportation and other restrictions. Only 30% of the workforce was reactivated. Until October, the workforce is finally at 100%. How ISIC adapted to COVID-19? Well, ISIC is an NGO, a non-governmental organization that has advocated for best practices regarding cement and concrete technology in its 35-year history. Our services include technical assessment, calibration of testing equipment, training of construction workers, architects, engineers, investigations, and our laboratory is accredited under ISO 17025. So we train workers in the construction industry, and the Salvadoran Vocational Training Institute is tasked with training the Salvadoran workforce. The annual budget is dependent on mandatory contributions from employers, and funds are allocated to third parties via tender. ISIC holds free webinars, but we also participate in some of these funds in the following topics: construction of buildings, bridges and roads, safety and quality control in construction, soils and construction materials, environment, topography. So what changed? Well, before the pandemic, training was held on site. We had and still have free webinars, which were projected for visitors to watch live on site. And training courses were held for INSAFORP and private enrollees, but they had to come here to our offices. And because of the restrictions that no more than 10 people could be gathered in one place, ISIC had to adopt virtual meetings and conferences via Zoom to continue its training program. To date, we have completed 23 courses, and we are still doing courses until the middle of December, and we will continue until January and February. So what are the conclusions? Well, COVID-19 pandemic has affected the construction industry in El Salvador and worldwide, as we all know. This is a given. COVID-19 is a serious pandemic, and it has had a huge impact on the construction industry and the economy. But we must look for opportunities that allow us to grow or improve our performance. In our case, well, because of this, we had to adopt technology like Zoom, meetings to hold our virtual courses, and this has allowed us to have a greater reach. So we are able to reach anyone that is interested in taking our courses wherever they are. And they don't have to be here in El Salvador. They can be in Guatemala or Honduras. And we have had some cases where some people have enrolled in our courses from those places, from those countries. And also, now it's easier to have international trainers, because you just connect. They don't have to leave their country. Just connect to Zoom, and they can give the courses online in real time. And companies have had to adapt, implementing home office to keep operating during quarantine and lockdown. And well, in El Salvador, we don't have a culture of home office or working at home, because the idea is that, well, before, the idea was that if you were working at home, you weren't working at all. But now, because of the pandemic and because of the restrictions on transportation and the quarantine, it was necessary for companies to adopt these technologies to be able to work from home, keep communicated, having all their information available to their employees at all the time, with cloud technology, cloud storage. So it has shown us that we can work from home and continue to be productive. So it has given us an opportunity to improve in that sense. Well, that is all I have for you today. And if you have any questions, you can contact me on my email, which is on screen. And I am deeply honored to have been invited to this event, and I hope we can do it again. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Good morning. My name is Nilüfer Özgürk Zihnioğlu. I'm a professor of civil engineering in Boğaziçi University, Istanbul, Turkey. My colleague Yasin Engin is also a civil engineer and a graduate of Boğaziçi University. I would like to very much thank him for supporting me during the preparation of this presentation. Today, I'm going to talk about the effects of COVID-19 on the construction industry of Turkey and the effects of the actions taken by the government during the pandemic. Here is an outline of my presentation. First, I am going to give some information regarding the calendar of the events for COVID-19 in Turkey. Then we will talk about the condition of construction sector before pandemic. Then we will evaluate the effects of pandemic on the sector by considering different parts of the sector, such as the residential sales, the number of new licenses, overseas contracting services, and employment. And we will also talk about actions taken by the government during that times. Finally, I am going to very shortly talk about the need trends, how people reacted by the end of the pandemic by means of their preferences. So if we check out the calendar of events in Turkey, we can see that everything began for Turkey during February 2020 with cancellation of international flights from and to the affected countries. By March 11, first case of COVID was reported in Turkey, and immediately after this, all the schools were closed nationwide. Later, from mid-March till the end of the March, all restaurants, cafes, mosques, many workplaces, shopping centers were closed. National games, nationwide exams were cancelled. And during April and May, months of April and May, we had curfew for all citizens for several times, and this curfew actually was continuous for the senior and junior citizens of the country. And in May, the government announced that gradual stretching of the restrictions would be applied in May, June, and July, and it actually happened as they stated. So this figure is obtained from the web page of World Health Organization, and it represents the number of cases or the change of new cases, COVID cases in Turkey. As you can see from the figure, the confirmed cases, confirmed serious cases made a peak at around end of April and beginning of May. So these were the times that we had curfews already. And then when we approach to the months of summer, the number of cases decreased. Now we will begin to talk about industrial data. Before we begin to talk about industrial data, I would like to give annual growth of Turkish construction industry for the last couple of years, since this is going to give an idea about the condition of the construction sector even before the COVID, how things were going for construction sector before COVID. The thing is that construction sector has been the leading sector in Turkey for the last 20 years. And when the supporting industries such as building materials, construction machinery, engineering, and architecture are taken into account, the share of the sector goes up to 30% in the overall economy. Unfortunately, there was a downturn in the construction activity, and this downturn was deepened in 2019, as you can see from the figure. Later, in 2019, growth numbers begin to increase. Unfortunately, with the arrival of pandemic, the growth in the positive direction was turned back again in the negative direction. So the condition of construction industry, even before the pandemic, was already not very good. Then what happened and how the companies are affected because of the pandemic? This is a general evaluation. The first thing was that there was significant recession in infrastructure and construction tenders. Increased costs due to increase of oil prices and building materials resulted in rearrangement of prices, and this was also due to depreciation of Turkish lira, and that very badly affected the companies. And finally, extra costs occurred for companies due to COVID-19 measures. As a result of all of these, and for some reasons that we cannot actually, maybe we have forgot to mention here, the non-performing loan debts of the construction companies increased 4 times in April 2020 when compared to the same month of 2018, according to the Banking Regulation and Supervision Agency of Turkey. Now we are going to evaluate the effect of pandemic on construction industry by considering different parts of the construction industry, beginning from residential sales, because residential sales takes an important share from the construction industry. So what happens to the residential sales during the first wave of pandemic? Please check out this figure. This figure represents housing loan annual interest rates. And when you check out this figure, you can easily see that even in 2019, housing loan interest rates were very high in Turkey. And because of that, the number of residential sales were low. But then during the summer months, immediately after the peak times of COVID, the government take an action and decreased the housing loan interest rates to revive the construction industry, to revive the residential sales. Now we will see the effects of this decrease in the housing loan interest rates, how this affected the residential sales. As you can see from the figure, we have actually 2 data given on this figure. One of them is the total sales, which is represented on the left-hand side of the figure, and the other one is the bar chart, which actually gives the share of mortgage sales in the total sales. So you can see the percentage of mortgage sales on the right-hand side of the figure. When we examine the figure, we can easily say that the residential sales, the number of residential sales were quite low in 2019. It made a peak by the end of 2019, but then again, with the arrival of pandemic, the numbers decreased again. Around this time, the government took an action, and as we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, decreased the housing loan interest rates. When the housing loan interest rates are decreased, the people actually began to shop for residentials. As you can see, there was an important and steep increase in the number of residential sales. And this is explained based on decreased loan rates as well as revenge spending. What is revenge spending? You may have heard of these. You know, the people were at their homes for quite a bit time, for a couple of months, and the people that were planning to buy residentials were not able to buy that houses or homes or apartments. But when the curfews ended, people went out and they began to look for the things that they were planning to buy already. So as a result of this decreased loan rates and revenge spending, the number of residential sales highly increased and made a peak around July, month of July. And then, unfortunately, the numbers decreased again because beginning from this month, interest rates increased again. And house prices also increased because of the increased sales. As you can see from this figure, average residential unit prices increased very steeply in the months of summer, and that actually prevent people from buying more houses or more residentials. Now, if we consider the new licenses, this is actually a great representation of the construction sector also, because when a company applies for a new building license, this means that in the next couple of years, the company will be constructing. So we should also check the number of new building licenses. If we see this figure, we can see the building licenses, the number of new building licenses increased again during months of summer and then decreased. But this is a good representation, and it tells us that there was a revival of the industry during these months. And the reason for this could be explained based on decrease in the house stocks because of the increased house sales. Another important factor is the overseas contracting services, the change in the overseas contracting services. Turkey companies are really active in the overseas contracting services, and this could be easily understood from this figure. As you can see, the share of the Turkey companies were really high in the past years from the overseas contracting services. Unfortunately, if you check out the number for the 2020, for the first 9 months of the 2020, the share of the companies really decreased because of the effect of pandemic. So this highly affected the condition of the construction companies in Turkey. What happened to the employment? If we check out the numbers regarding the employment, this figure represents number of employees in the construction industry. Unfortunately, there was a decrease in the number of employees in the construction industry in the first couple of months of
2020. This was mostly because of the pandemic. Here at that point, the government banned the layoffs, and that actually made a good effect. In the meanwhile, at the same time, there was a revival of the industry because of the increased residential sales and because of the number of COVID cases had decreased during the summer months. So we have observed an increase in the number of employees during the months of summer. This figure is prepared by McKinsey & Company. It is an analysis which represents the degree of affection of different industries from COVID-19. Here, this part represents the construction industry. Uppercase letter D represents the construction industry. And according to that analysis, construction industry is located in less to middle affected zone and middle to high financial risk zone. This is actually also valid for Turkish construction industry. Now, we have up until this point, we have been talking about the effects of pandemic on the construction industry. Now we will talk about the actions taken by the government. What did they do to be able to decrease these effects of the pandemic on the industry? One of the first actions was about public procurement contracts. The government gave opportunity of extending the time or terminating the contract. According to this, a contractor may apply the government, stating that the performance of the contractual work has become impossible temporarily or permanently, partially or completely due to the COVID-19 outbreak. And this application is evaluated by the Ministry of Treasury and Finance. And as a result of the evaluation, it may be decided to extend the time or terminate the contract. Regarding employment, as of April, layoffs were banned by the government. That was an important decision. This situation still continues. And the employees and companies were supported with short work allowance. Some other actions were obtained considering loans, debts, and payments of the companies. Some tax debts of companies have been delayed. Delayed payments were made to companies for state-funded projects. That was also important. Loans were offered by several banks for supporting all of the industries, not only the construction industry, but other industries also. And as we have mentioned before, housing loan interest rates were lowered as of March 2020 to revive the residential sales. The last part of my presentation is about the new trends and change in people's tendencies after first COVID wave. What happened? How people's preferences change when they are buying houses or residentials or in their way of living. The research shows that people, since they were stuck at home for long times during the pandemic, if they have a chance to work from home or house, they began to go to their summer houses, or sometimes they decided to buy new houses in the resort areas of Turkey, in the west shore of Turkey. Other people who were living in big apartments, they preferred to move, if they have a chance, to the houses with gardens and balconies. They also represented their choices by choosing smart homes. Why were they choosing smart homes? Because new smart homes may come with some new features, such as a ranged humidity and temperature level, which actually creates some kind of a hygiene at home. And there are some robotic technologies which may clean the house or home, and this helps people to keep the place with a certain hygiene level. What other preferences did they represent? People mentioned that they may need separate ventilation systems for each and every room. They preferred the places with no elevator, and the designers, architects, actually began to design houses with offices inside, because many people now began to work from home, and this may actually change from our habits. In the future, many people will continue to work from their home. Other things that were preferred by the customers or the people were, many times people preferred more than one bathroom in their places. They preferred antibacterial materials, antibacterial flooring covers. They also asked for sound insulation because, during these pandemic times, we were at home as a whole family for long hours. Now, that's the end of my presentation. Before I end my presentation, I would like to give an idea about the current situation. Unfortunately, now in Turkey, we are living the second wave of COVID. The number of cases as of November 25 was reported to be more than 28,000. All schools, except preschools, restaurants, and some workplaces were again closed beginning from November 17. So we will see what happens next during the next days of winter. I would like to wish all of you healthy days during these difficult times. And I would also like to thank you for listening to me. Have a good day.
Hi, thank you for your kindly invitation to share some advances in concrete technology thinking post-COVID-19. I am Omar Javier Silva from Colombia in South America, and I want to start sharing you the distance between you and me. We are separated by 15,840 kilometers in a straight line. Taking in account that the diameter of the Earth is 12,742 kilometers, we are separated by 125% the diameter of the Earth, a very long distance. However, we have many things in common, and one of them is the concrete technology with which we build our cities. In the picture, you see a photo of India, and in this photo you see a picture of Bogota, the capital of Colombia. The other thing that we have in common is the current pandemic situation caused by COVID-19. So in this short conference, we are going to try to mix these two things and that we currently have in common. First, I want to talk about concrete. Concrete is the most used construction material worldwide, and cement, its principal material, is the material with the highest per capita consumption in the world after water. Why is the most widely used construction material? For 4 great reasons. First, because it allows to generate various aesthetic appearances. In the picture, you see a concrete pavement with different colors, red, yellow, and natural color. Second one, for the versatility in the forms that can be obtained. In the picture, you see the Tenerife Auditorium of the Opera in Spain. It's designed by Santiago Calatrava. Third, because it has physical and mechanical properties to be used as a structural material. In the picture, you see the largest arch bridge in America, in USA. And finally, because it's an economical product if you compare it with other construction materials. In the picture, you see the Burj Khalifa, currently the tallest building in the world, with 828 meter high and up to 525 meters. The structure is completely in concrete. Now, I want to share some advances and developments of the concrete, which will serve us in the post-COVID-19 pandemic situation. First, the Fast Track. Fast Track is an appropriate technology for rehabilitation and reinforcement of pavements. The principal characteristic of proper is that we can reduce the traffic disruption. So we have so many applications in airport runways, access to homes, urban and rural roads, intersection, parking bays, etc. Second one is the ultra high performance concrete. The properties of this type of concrete is compressive strength. It's about 10 times compared to the conventional concrete. It's a very, very high compressive strength. It has a great capacity of deformation, high resistance to abrasion, high impermeability, high resistance to the carbonatation or chloride penetration, and is easy of molding. Another type is the early age strength concrete. This is a concrete that uses accelerating additives and has some benefits in the set and achieve self-supporting resistance in short time. It allows faster stripping, and therefore we have a greater efficiency of the equipment on site. In Colombia, we have an application of this type of concrete in housing construction. In the picture you see a housing building using this material, and it allows a very short construction time. This is another example of this type of concrete. Another one concrete is the self-curing concrete. The curing is a process to maintain the humidity and the temperature of the concrete to guarantee the correct hydration of cement. Some problems from the inadequate curing are concrete with lower compressive strength, plastic cracking, crazing, and of course, less durability. Using the self-curing concrete, it absorbs water from the air, and this is a common form that we can solve the problem caused by a lack curing. Another type of concrete is the concrete with controlled workability. The workability of concrete is one of the most important properties, and due to the traffic problems in this time, it's more important. The use of this type of concrete, the workability controlled concrete, allows the stabilization of return concrete and allows the stabilization of freshly concrete that we can transport it by long distances. Another type of concrete is the insulating concrete. The concrete with acoustic and thermal isolation capabilities is very used to maintain a stable temperature inside the buildings without consuming more electricity. This is very important in modern time, thinking in sustainability. How we can mix the insulated concrete with the intentional inclusion of high air content and the use of extremely light aggregates like regolite or polystyrene. Translucent concrete. The translucent concrete include glass fiber in small quantities. It allows to see what is on the other side of a wall and has some benefits in terms of natural lighting in interior spaces. It's a product that seeks to be more aesthetic and practical, but it has an important resistance that is one of the principal properties of concrete. In the video, you see a short application of translucent concrete. Precast concrete. Precast concrete has many years using this material, but thinking post-COVID-19, we can apply the precast concrete because they are made in factory under technical controlled conditions. It can be conventionally reinforced, fiber reinforced, pre-stressed or post-tensioned. We can precast so many elements: beams, girders, columns, piers, piles, slab, walls, etc. This picture, you see the Barroco International Museum in Mexico, designed by Toyo Ito. It's a totally precast building, and it's very beautiful construction. And also, any decorative element or urban furniture may be precast. In the picture, you see different applications. And finally, I want to talk about 3D printing. 3D printing is a form of additive manufacturing used to fabricate buildings or construction components with new shapes, completely new shapes, not previously possible with traditional concrete formwork. I want to share you a short video of 3D printing. This is an application of 3D concrete in Colombia, a little house, and other little applications. And thank you for your kind invitation and for your attention.
Hello everyone. I'm going to talk about the construction industry and impacts to the industry with COVID-19, providing a high-level overview, and also we'll be discussing a bit about the strategic response that is required by the industry in general. So if you look at the construction industry, it mainly consists of three segments: real estate, infrastructure, and industrial structures. And as an industry, it's fairly large. It accounts for about 13% of the world's GDP. However, the productivity growth of the industry has been as low as 1%, which indicates that there are several inefficiencies and there's also room for improvement. The industry itself is undergoing a transformation with the introduction of modular construction, moving away from in-situ construction, for example. There's increased R&D spending. So at the time that the COVID happened, basically the industry is having its own sort of journey of transformation. If you look at Indian construction industry, it's basically in a journey to be the third biggest construction industry globally in 2025, which means there's a rapid growth expected in general, and is found to be highly fragmented with about 250 companies employing more than 500 people. So let's look at some of the trends of the industry despite COVID-19. We see that there's increased digitalization. So before a construction is basically built, we are increasingly using tools to see how it would look like and how things are integrated. So there's increased use of building information modeling, 4D and 5D simulation, and not only to simulate a construction and construction activity, there are monitoring applications increasingly being used to monitor worker productivity and adherence, say, for example, to health and safety standards. We also see that the industries are undergoing consolidation. So consolidation could be from the perspective of vertical integration, where you acquire players upstream or downstream. And then there's also this trend that we call as disintermediation, which means typical job roles that are used to coordinate activities, who act as intermediaries, are increasingly getting replaced, or sometimes their job is getting very different with the technology being introduced to that job. So we see, for example, cost planners, construction supervisors, or coordinators. They are either jobs they are changing or becoming redundant. Some of the other trends include the use of off-site construction and product-based structures. So increasingly, the items, the construction, parts of construction and modules are being constructed off-site to gain economies of scale, the advantage of economies of scale, to gain productivity, reduce risks with in-situ construction, and also to achieve better quality. There are also sustainability initiatives being carried out in terms of building design, sustainable buildings, as well as material replacement with sustainable alternatives. So to reduce the risk of construction, and also to speed up the construction, there are lighter materials, high performance materials being increasingly used, and even with main sort of construction materials such as cement. Initiatives such as use of low clinker factor cement, geopolymer concrete, and CO2 concrete are increasingly observed. So what did COVID-19 do to the construction industry? It introduced major shock. The current activities got disrupted. At the same time, with reduced confidence, jobs were getting cancelled, and also there were the investment being deferred. So 81% of the CFOs said that they're considering cost reductions in response to the crisis, and 60% say they are planning to defer or cancel investments, particularly in the area of CapEx. So not only the operational work got disrupted, the future work that could come to the industry got quite disrupted. And the symptoms that were noticed were that there were projects being cancelled or delayed and activities getting on hold. So the challenges to the workers come from multiple perspectives. there are practical challenges to be at the workplace and attend to work because of the social distancing requirements and lockdowns. And at the same time, there's increased insecurity about the availability of work. How would the skills needed for future jobs change with the pandemic? And if a recession comes, would they be unemployed for a long period of time? So there's increased insecurity created among workers, construction workers, which actually, the construction industry is an industry which has a very large percentage of casual workers. For companies, the shock comes from, again, multiple angles. Firstly, the shock of survival, so the need for cash flow. So if the construction got disrupted due to the pandemic, there's jobs ongoing, there are milestones to be reached, there's bills to be paid. At the same time, until you reach the milestone, there's inability to recover the collectibles. So some companies obviously face the threat of insolvency, and in the medium term, there's the need to restructure debt and to seek new sources of capital. So organizations which had high cash reserves and capital reserves basically had the higher chances of survival because they build resilience with the reserves. So what are some of the response strategies for organizations? They had to absorb the cash flow shock as well as face supply chain vulnerability. And in responding to the shock, basically, or responding to the pandemic as a crisis, there was the need to be able to know what's happening so that response plans can be devised very quickly. So forecasting to the detail became very important, and also knowing what's happening across the organization to have central control to maneuver was very important. So the reason for having or the need for having increased transparency across functions, increased sort of visibility across operational frontline as well as across the hierarchies became very important with the pandemic. If an organization knows its cash flow positions, its repayment schedules, impact on volumes and margins, stoppage of work, it became easy to make decisions with the pandemic. With the pandemic, we noticed that sometimes the situation was very uncertain and still is. The need to make decisions within a very dynamic environment becomes easy if you know what's happening within your organizations. So as an example, to model something like site closure scenarios, what's the risk on closing tomorrow or closing in 2 days? So if you want to basically have an understanding of that, you need to know information really fast and as much as possible really accurately. With the pandemic, in facing the crisis, there's also the need to conduct contractual risk analysis. So there's a delay of payment, delays of work, and there's a need to undertake renegotiations. And not only to protect the organization itself, there's a need to protect the critical supply base. So when at the end of the pandemic, when the situation gets better, if the organization basically loses critical suppliers and the organization is basically unable to protect them, that's going to be difficult. So to revive as much as possible in a better way, there's the need to basically provide contractual flexibility and understand and have a conversation with the critical suppliers. So in the medium term, the need to renegotiate lending, restructure it, raise new equity, these are all of them became an essential need to the construction industry. For employees, there's the challenge to maintain continuity of work, and obviously in situ construction, it becomes impossible with the pandemic to continue work as usual. So increased workplace measures to have to basically monitor health and safety standards, better information management to understand who came, who was present at the workplace in a site, that was very necessary. If we think of the other organizational workforce which are not site workers but work from home, so we saw a shift of organizations allowing employees to increasing the work from home. There's more sensitive and critical information handled outside offices without supervision, and then there's a need to have need for employees to basically have initiative in work and take leadership. So this time, self-discipline and self-management became very crucial. And at the same time, to empower the workers to do their job, there's the need to pass them information and as much as possible real time. So on one hand, it became crucial to manage the risk with that, cybersecurity, risk identification of work happening outside. But at the same time, there's increasing reliance on people who work from home to get the work going. For companies who are thinking of having vertical integration opportunities, this also provides an opportunity to restructure their workforce if they want to have things differently at the end of the pandemic. That opportunity prevails as well. If you think of, I like to bring this quote and summarize in the presentation: when the snow falls and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. So the pandemic, there's it is a crisis. It acts as a crisis. It disrupted the industry as a whole, but there's also the opportunity to rise out of it better. So if we undertake critical supply building, we can build a resilient supply chain. If we have central control and increased transparency achieved in the organization, being responsive to a crisis or any other situations becomes quite good. And then if you do talent harvesting, retain the employees, empower them, you build an empowered workforce. And at the same time, if there's equity and debt restructuring to build cash reserves, when at the end of the pandemic, when the companies come out of the crisis, there's the opportunity to grow with mergers and acquisitions. So with that, I would like to end the presentation, and I thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fernanda Pacheco. First of all, I would like to say that I'm grateful to be part of this event. I work at an university in the southeast part of Brazil, which is named Unicinos, and it's part of a global network of universities, which is Jesuit University. I'm here to present the work that is self-healing and self-repairing concrete. We know that concrete has a huge use worldwide, and the cracking is a pathological damage that may lead to severe deterioration. So there's a need to increase the durability so we can save money, we don't need to do reworks, and also that we can turn structures to be sustainable. Studies of mechanisms that can act on concrete, creating products that can heal the cracks, lead us to the knowledge of self-healing and self-repairing concrete. They are divided because self-healing is considered for healing as any process carried out by the material itself that involves the recovery and improvement in the performance of material that has been damaged by any process previously. And self-repairing, it's limited to the closure of the crack, and it doesn't involve properties as physical or mechanical. We have self-healing mechanism that is autogenic or autonomous. From autogenic, we have materials that it's already used by concrete as cement or pozzolanic materials. And for autonomous, we put some material in concrete only to have this healing capability as chemical compounds of bio solutions, for example. So this classification is based on the materials needed for the process. We know that mechanisms they have requirements to occur. There's a need to evaluate if they can work on real structure or real exposure conditions. We know that there's an influence of curing condition, and it's also need the analysis of the reliability and also if the mechanism can work in multiple cracking. And different mechanisms, they have different maximum thickness, which they can work in. Self-healing mechanism, we have autogenic by cement consumption. We have two options. There is hydration of non-hydrated cement particles and dissolution and carbonation of calcium hydroxide. This is a mechanism that is influenced by water, the crack age, the crack width, and cement consumption. We have also deltogenic by the use of pozzolans. They react with calcium hydroxide and water, and they promote the CSH. This is related with cracking on early ages when we still have the pozzolanic reactions to occur. We can also have the autonomous bibacterial solution. It works similarly as the human body healing, as blood clotting and bone recovery. And related to the bacterial solution, it's the process that occur usually is the carbonation of CH and the reaction with bacterial solution. We have to choose the bacteria, and in Brazil we have the Bacillus subtilis AP91. There is proved that can produce carbonate, so they can be used for concrete biocementation. We also have the option to use chemical solution that is usually commercialized ready for use as sodium silicate. It also reacts with cement compounds and can also promote the CSH. To use bacterial solutions and chemical solutions, we have the option to use capsules to put these materials as expanded clay or expanded perlite. This study, they compare those two aggregates, and they discovered that perlite works well for the healing, for example. We also have the option to use or not the vacuum chamber to put the materials inside those capsules. Some authors pointed conditions related to environmental, where this structure is inside and the cure. So in et al, they pointed out that marine environment works well for the healing. Palin, Victor, and Jonkers, they cure samples on marine water and potable water, and they discovered that marine water works better. Related to carbon dioxide, we have the carbonation reduces the pH, which is better for the bacterial survivor. Udrin and other authors, they aged ACC for 1 year, and they also discovered that this carbon dioxide works better for the cure condition. Hoig Flores, they say that there is a need of water, and Luo, Kian, and Lee, they say that wet condition is better than wet and dry, which is better than only humid condition. We have procedures for concrete cracking, as put materials on the fresh state, put the samples on the stove to the cracking formation by heat, to cut the samples, or do the deflection test. And also to check if the healing and the repairing is working, we have chemical, physical, and images analysis. What we learned in my research group here in Brazil, first of all, we were also comparing expanded clay and expanded perlite from Brazil, and we checked by the same analysis that expanded perlite has much more voids, so it may be good to put the chemical and bio solution. And also that there's a higher impact when we use expanded clay than expanded perlite, so expanded perlite may be better to not damage the concrete properties. And also by analysis, by view analysis on microscopy, we check it out that expanded perlite, it's better to conduce the continuous healing inside the crack. We have to choose the bacteria, and also we have to obtain the bacterial development curve, so we can choose the solution that we are using in every sample. We know that there's an influence of bacterial solution on the capability of to produce calcium carbonate, for example. So we check the solutions with concentration of 6, 7, and 8 UFSC for ml. And we check that with solution of 6 that we have progressive behavior, and it was able to heal the cracks of 0.46 millimeters. We have solution of 7. The product was only formed on the crack perimeter and with values of 0.22. And with solution of 8, we check that the product was inside the crack and on the surface with the maximum value of 0.19. There's different mechanisms. We have environmental impact and we have healing capability to be analyzed. So we did a experimental procedure, a huge experimental procedure, and we were analyzing the semen consumption, for example, and it was able to promote the continuous healing with crack of 0.59 millimeters. We also evaluated superficial irregularity. It was good to form the product made because of the presence of water, continuous presence of water, and the size was 1.2 millimeters, which is really good for being above 1 millimeter. There it's usually what we have in biography. And we did the XRD analysis, and we checked that there's a CaSH, CSH, and calcium carbonate. Also, the shape is okay with what were expected. With pozzolanic materials, we checked that the product was male formed only on the cracking perimeter, with which was the width of usually 1 millimeter. We have samples with 7.5% of silica fume and 15% of silica fume replacing cement, and we check also the crystals that are forming on the crack perimeter, and we see this almost the same materials from the other mechanism, and we have those products as layers from the same analysis. Using sodium silicate, we saw the crystal shape, and also we saw a solid material on the crack with 1.48 millimeters, which is really good. And we also have some cracks when it was not completely recovered. And here with those different shapes of healing with 0.44 and 0.42 millimeters. And also the chemical analysis that is showing like calcium carbonate and silicon oxide, and here the shapes from SEM analysis. From bacterial solutions, we have the crack completely healed with 1.67 millimeters, sorry. And we also have here inside the crack, here as continuous healing from small cracking and bigger cracking. And here inside the crack, here there's a solid material in all the continuous crack. And here there's a common occurrence that material is not only inside the crack, but also on the surface of the samples. Also, we can check those phenomena. And here we find out calcium carbonate, silicon oxide, CSH, and organic materia. When we check the medium values for crack repair, we may think that semen consumption was the best option, which is not, because there's just a few occurrences. Then that's why the medium value is bigger than in the others. We can see the good behavior from chemical and bacterial solution. And for the maximum values, we reach the values above 1.6 millimeters for bacterial solution, which is really good considering the real crack in structures. This is the data that we obtained in this research, and I will be glad to share it with you if you have interest. And to finalize, we analyzed the pure condition, and we checked that submerged is better than only wet for cement, pozzolanic, chemical, and biologic solutions, so maybe a condition for self-healing to occur. And I appreciate your time. Here is the social media from my university and undergraduation course, and here you have my mail. So I will be glad if you contact me asking for more details of this research. Thank you again for the invitation. I hope we all have a good event.
Welcome to India Construction Week 2020 and online international conference on revival of construction industry in post-COVID world. I am structural consulting engineer Aniruddha Nakhwa and I represent Builders Association of India and the fraternity. I thank CIDC and the organizing committee to give me opportunity to speak on this topic related to the concrete technology and its management in this COVID scenario and post-COVID world. Friends, I would certainly like to bring to light unlocking the unlocked in post-pandemic scenario. Can we make this difference? Let us see. Friends, we all are aware it has been a year now the coronavirus migrated and arrived at almost all the airports of the world and infected the world with its wave. We are all affected by the hit of this corona wave. As a result of this wave, it was necessary to impose sudden lockdowns in many countries, and it was needed as a need of time, as human life was the prime priority to be saved. The life also needed to be brought to normal gradually, and steps of unlocks were also gradually implemented. Many activities were unlocked, but there still exists psychological unlock which needs to be unlocked. This psychological lock exists in form of fear and anxiety and damage to the lifestyle of the people in lockdown days. Unlocking this will be the game changer in the present scenario. Coming to the setbacks of the pandemic and the lockdown, it has threatened the life, brought fear and anxiety in the minds of people, and tremendously affected the economics of the entire world, of which construction industry is a major part. In the history, for first time after industrial revolution, all the wheels had stopped except for the clock, whose needles were piercing our minds and thoughts for overall survival. Only the graphs of COVID cases were increasing, and those friends, we can say that 2020 has brought and given insight to intercept all these sectors in the industry, including ourselves and our vision for the world, for better tomorrow. The key factors affecting the industry are the 3 M's of the construction industry: manpower, material and money. Manpower, as we can see, is totally disrupted during the lockdowns. There was chaos, confusion, and lot of workers in the industry migrated to their hometowns. Many were left unemployed. There was zero production, shortage of raw material, and at instances where there were emergency works going on, there were increase in prices. Money had stopped due to stoppage of work and sustaining establishments. Affected construction sectors. Almost all the sectors, infrastructure, real estate, repair industry, and how we find solutions. Solutions can be of two forms, short term and long term. The important one, empowerment of the 3 M's in the industry. Adoption of sustainable technologies, education and community awareness. Solutions, empowerment of the 3 M's. Empowerment of 3 M's in the industry, manpower, that is our first aim. Futuristic long-term approach, intelligence and human resource power. We require both the muscle power, the worker to the ground level, as well as the intelligent people working in the AC rooms. The most important thing are the students, are the source. These are our resources, the young generation. Education, educating the students, the future generation, and handing over the baton of knowledge and truthfulness to this generation. Providing environmental friendly sustainable technology, social awareness and social engineering. Friends, in these years we have lost the essence of humanity in our busy schedules, the touch with the community, and treating all the activities and all the classification of works, all the job sectors with equality and equal importance, and teaching this to our young generation will be a key of success. We are one nation, one world, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Short-term and long-term approach in various sectors. Government shall take an initiative to facilitate migration during the problematic times, as well as the reverse migration of the workforce, and promote medical facilities. Private sector initiative shall be taken in form of in-house and on-site basic facilities like food, shelter and clothing to the laborers, workers and the staff. Education through social scientists, institutes like TISS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, who actively take part in empowerment of the country through the social science activities, learning the mind of the people and giving a social touch will and encouragement to the workforce as well as the intelligent. We can say, like in Hindi, it's a sangam, it's an amalgamation of intelligence, knowledge and power. So we can see many projects in India, especially the slum redevelopment projects and projects like Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan or Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, where NGOs through and the social scientists are involved in the redevelopment and community awareness programs to make the people understand the benefits of these projects to achieve the common goal. Similarly, they understand the psychology and make such projects successful, and we have already seen projects like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan been taken into account and made successful. Solutions for material empowerment. Short-term approach. Government making initiatives and making reforms for manufacturing industry, raw material supply, and improve logistics policies during the transition stage of pandemic and post-pandemic. Private sectors shall take initiatives to improve buyer and seller credits in assurances and insurances. Long-term approach. Government takes initiative to appoint techno-socio and economic study groups who will monitor the past, present scenario and forecast better reforms for the government. Private sector take initiatives to follow up the new reforms and establish sovereignty of the country and mankind. Money. Short-term approach is more important in this scenario. Government takes initiative for facilitating loans at minimum interest, maybe 0% for a couple of years. This will attract buyer-seller capacities. Also, direct cash benefit for 60% population, which is a low income group in our country, as suggested by Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, where he has suggested to give an X amount, say of rupees 10,000 at post-COVID stage, which will increase the spending capacity of the individual in these groups and will churn up the economy. As they spend, there will be buyers, there will be sellers, and so on. Private sector can similarly give a direct cash loan and incentives to the workers in present, transition and immediate post-COVID scenario on short-term basis. Buyers and sellers credit facilities shall be increased. Long-term approach for money empowerment shall be made through economic experts like Abhijit Banerjee and many more, and such experts to form groups, study groups, and provide good reforms for the governments. Solutions through sustainable technologies. Adoption of sustainable technology. Friends, Corona has taught us many lessons during this pandemic and lockdowns. Respect of human values and social engineering. We can see we should respect each and every classification of the community as said by me and said by many gurus in social engineering. Optimum use of resources and time is a very big aspect taught to us by Corona. lowering the logistics and increasing the productions is also a boon given in disguise by Corona. Optimum use of information technology. Friends, we can see that during the lockdown conditions, when we were locked up in our homes, our offices where most of us did our work through online businesses, online meetings. So we were almost working 95% online and only 5% offline. Gradually, in today's scenario, 50-50% or 40-60% is the scene what we see today. With limited time, or rather we can see if you travel, you are stuck up in traffic, and so it is in these days when the commuting has become difficult during the unlock stage, and there is still we are in the shadow of this pandemic. It is better that we are having these online platforms like Zoom, GoToMeetings, and so on. And as I see further, it will the online facility will persist because it is going to cut your logistics and time tremendously, and you can, when you are available, you can easily commute through these online facilities. Yes, and maybe in the future to come we can opt for 80-20 or 70-30 online offline solutions. I think Corona has taught us almost everything that we unlearned in all these days or haven't learned. Online and offline working patterns and its adoption for future will be one of the keys for reviving the industry. Important solutions: education and community awareness, a long-term solution. This is a time-tested solution. Concrete technology and its management is covered only 10% in overall engineering bachelor's course. For example, if you consider 4 to 5 years of the bachelor's course and there are 50 subjects for the entire course, we can see only concrete technology makes a part of 2 subjects. In civil engineering or construction engineering, construction technology syllabus, and the performance of concrete technology by the engineers is required 100% on the ground. So construction technology and the allied subjects, for example non-destructive testing, chemistry of concrete, chemical engineering in concrete, this should go hand in hand in collaboration of education sectors, universities, with research and practicing organizations, and this will play a key role in building the future. Continual education and latest technology update will be key to sustainable growth in this sector. Organizations and institutes such as Construction Industry Development Corporation (CIDC), Indian Engineers Institute (IEI), American Concrete Institute (ACI), and Builders Association of India (BAI), Indian Society of Structural Engineers (ISSE), and Indian Geotechnical Community, and many more are already active in these directions. In this, the students of the final years should also be brought along with the help of these organizations on the field, so they have good hands on the work when they are actually on the field. Friends, let us check what is today's scenario. There is a rise of corona again. The Western world as well as India, we are on the horizon of seeing the second and third wave of corona. Our ship is yet in the mid-ocean of this pandemic and finding its way to the harbor, the corona-free world. Friends, at this very juncture of time, it can be said that it is indeed difficult to imagine a world without corona. But yes, it can be worked out. You can see here the year 2020 was the year of protecting ourselves and the industry, and likewise, as we are seeing, there are vaccines being developed and they will soon arrive in the market by the end of this year or start of 2021. So you can see the one in form of injection. So as we see the corona vaccine coming, that is, we are finding the solution on the corona, we as construction industry will definitely find the solution and revive our industry. Yes, in a different philosophy, that is living with corona with mass community awareness, education and its practice. Concluding remarks. Can we achieve this? Yes, of course. Nothing is impossible. Humans are undefeatable on this planet. Since the birth of this planet and existence of humans and their survival, humans have combated lakhs and crores of such viruses and bacteria and are still living. The important thing is no virus can defeat this breed, the humans, because the earlier lacks intelligence and the later is smart. In reviving this construction industry in post-COVID world, the basic important things we should look at are empowerment of 3 M's, the manpower, materials and money. Continual education is a long-term solution. Practice and its implementation. Developing excellence in all fields as well as skills. Bringing awareness through social engineering. The key to success in this scenario is patience is the game and patience is the name of game. Friends, so let's break the chains, unlock the unlocked, come together and revive our construction industry. Thank you.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation so high is the success saga on the grounds, of the excellence shown by that you see in India's aviation. Is the success saga of the excellence shown by and maintaining Authority of India. Along with that, AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining close to the airport. Along with that, AAI has a site CSR programs and activities close to the people. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development to generate livelihood opportunities in backward and weaker sections for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
At the same time, there is a unemployed youth, so if we provide them skill, at the same time there is a unemployed youth. So if
through this skill development training, the student gets theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related skill development training, like the student gets theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related subjects, and like land survey, etc., electrical wireman, general work supervisor, site accountant, and storekeeper, etc.
We distribute pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to get the unskilled manpower. Pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to
More
get
than
the
5,000 students have been trained
we can make
with
them
this
skilled.
skill
So we are
development
providing them
training
3 months
program
training.
since 2015. More than 5,000 students have been trained with this skill development training program since 2015.
लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी इस सब्जेक्ट से रिलेटेड मेरे पास 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग नहीं थी, लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी नॉलेज मिली। यहाँ से मतलब सीख के जाएंगे 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग के, अपने घर पे जाके महीना बाकी रहना, मतलब अपना कोई सीख लिया 2 महीने के अंदर।
ये बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है एयरपोर्ट और CIDC।
Skill development training